It's crazy.
That's funny, man. I
Did you did you send out the message for today about today's stream in Discord?
I did it on Twitter, which is what I almost always do. And here, I typically don't put much in Gen Chat. I should. I don't know. We can put one in there, but people typically trickle in, I guess, after a little while. But we also missed last week, so we'll see who shows up. That was the first time we hadn't had a show in several weeks, so I think we should just probably get into. We are streaming on YouTube, so we are live over there as well, and got
Let's
2 people I think on. Maybe Rohek's with us.
let's wait a more minute and then we start.
Sounds good, man. I'll get one up in Gen Chat here.
Welcome everyone. We are about to start in 1 minute, so thank you for joining.
Yeah, I say let's hit it, man. We'll just get rolling. Rolling with it here. GM to everybody. We were off last week for Memorial Day here in the States. Was out of town for a number of days, which is great to get to disconnect at least for a little bit. It's needed, when you're working remotely, particularly online for the majority of the day. But yeah, how you doing, man? How was your week last week? We didn't get a chance to go live.
What- It was good. Like, what's fun for me is that we cancel the Monday stream last week, and then suddenly for the first 2 days, Monday, Tuesdays, and part of the Wednesday, all my meetings starting to get canceled. So I suddenly found myself like with nothing to do or like a lot of free time. So that was so joyful to have like this unexpected break time, which I basically invested on playing League of Legends, but it was still appreciated. How about you last
There you
week?
go. It's good, man. Weather here shaped up, so getting outside has been nice. I think can't complain, too much. And, although it's interesting, what we do here on 1HTV, largely keeping track of what's happening in the DAO space, is like part of what I think we try to do is separate noise from signals. And I think, I want to say that in some ways this has become easier more recently. Like the pace at which people are building things really hasn't slowed down. The people who are intensely building 2-3 months ago are still doing that now, regardless of the change in the market. But in some ways it's easier, I'm finding, to like keep track of the places where value is being created, so to speak, because there isn't so much, like, the people who are just there to shill and to sort of grift to begin with have probably already left the scene or are going to be soon departing.
I do agree. People are not stopping building stuff, but I do feel the people who are not building, but I feel like decision making in general has slowed down. Like people are like they are building, but not necessarily that translates into governance a lot. Like I see it on the frequency of posts on snapshots, it has slowed down quite a bit, and people are posting less stuff, and like less decisions are being taken. Maybe because they want to wait for the market to sort of provide more information. But that's my sense making, that I feel like also in the amount of snapshot votes and stuff, I feel like there is people are still building because they need people need to stop do something. But at the same time, I did feel like people are having reservations. That's the word. People are having reservations when it comes to make decisions on putting up votes on snapshots and stuff like that.
Yeah, totally, man. We get that. We've been seeing that trend for several weeks, if not months now. and like the debate around how resources should be spent, I think is only going to intensify. And to that end, I think people here at GM, to everybody who's joining us, welcome back to 1HTV DAO News. Always glad to see everybody with us on Monday mornings, getting our week started here. Hope everybody had a good weekend. I think this trend that we're describing, Edu, and that you're describing, and seeing more careful examination of how resources is spent, provides a nice opportunity to also help important voices in the community get a chance to interact with token holders and to have like public discourse over agreements, disagreements, pros, cons of virtually anything associated with DAO governance. So we've been discussing this, and it's something that hopefully we'll be able to bring to all of you folks who are tuning in with us today, is some live debate between delegates, for example, perhaps in the Gitcoin ecosystem, or whether it's partners we have in places associated with the Common Stack or Shapeshift, or even outside, say the immediate ecosystem here on Gnosis Chain. I think that it might provide for some nice dynamic source, like way for people to learn about what's happening, and also be able to be more informed about the people who perhaps they're delegating their tokens to. So in a sense, I guess what I'm trying to say, Edu, is that the intensity, or the increased intensity around debate and decision making on how resources are allocated, I think provides an opportunity for people to even learn more about how that happens and how different DAOs are managing those challenges differently.
Correct. That's a good intention, I feel like, to have eyes open and be able to learn from this stage. This is a very interesting learning stage. So would you like to share the rest of the agenda for this week, and then we can jump into the news?
Let's do it. Absolutely. Once again, GM to everybody who's joining us here in Discord, I want to draw your attention to the event announcement here in the OneHive server. So at the very top, you should see happening now 1HTV DAO News Alpha. And if you click on the bit.ly link, that will take you over to our YouTube. And as we mentioned today on Twitter, we're going to we really want to encourage people to subscribe to 1HTV. There is also a sort of OG OneHive YouTube channel. We had some logistical issues in setting up a stream there, and so we did spin up 1HTV more recently. But it has all of our shows organized into playlists. Sapote's done a fantastic job with that so far. We're going to start to cross-post more of our highlights here as well. But we want to encourage people to go over to the 1HTV YouTube channel and subscribe. What we're going to do is we're going to have a special NFT series that are going to be spun up by the man, the myth, the legend here, Rohek, who is here, of course, every Monday with us. He's got mad design skills, and he's done some work for OneHive, of course, in the past. If you've been with us going all the way back to like earlier in the year when we were doing trivia, we're going to have some really cool animated cards, NFT cards, okay, that we'll tease probably with maybe a little later this week. But the idea is each week when we get together, we're going to choose a random person from our new subscribers on YouTube, and we're going to go ahead and give this lucky winner an NFT, perhaps some honey as well. We may even combine the two. Billy Jitsu, of course, has designed NFTs that can distribute honey and other sorts of tokens. So we're going to get into some cool NFT tech associated with growing our YouTube reach and presence here. So I think we're almost to 100 subscribers. It'd be great to like 10x that in the next couple months here. So if people if you enjoy coming and listening in on Mondays and our other shows, please retweet on Twitter, subscribe, hit the bell button so you know when we're going live. This week we will have 3 live shows. We typically have 3, sometimes 2, but we're always here on Monday. Last week we weren't. It was Memorial Day in the US, but Edu and I are here like every Monday, delivering the news and having a great guest on. Today, of course, we do have Panvala, folks from Panvala, coming over to share a bit about their project and the NFTs that they got going on there. Tomorrow evening will be late night with Billy Jitsu. So this will be broadcast from Billy's Twitter Spaces, but we'll be running it on YouTube. Okay, so all the shows get run over to YouTube with a nice graphic overlay to help the viewing experience. What we're doing here really is aimed at education and entertainment, sort of a synthesis of those two. And so make sure to tune in on YouTube for all the shows, and you can catch their highlights after we've finished them. They'll be posted there as well, so you can feel free to tune in there, share the good stuff with other people around the space. It's always much appreciated. Wednesday afternoon at 3 p.m. Eastern, we have our weekly show on NFTs and gaming that's hosted by either Solar or Dosh. And if you're somebody who knows Gods Unchained, or if you like blockchain gaming, you should definitely tune in on Wednesday. Dosh and Solar, they have built a crypto project on top of Gods Unchained that enables you to place wagers and bets on live competitions. So this is built in on a decently frequent basis on Wednesdays. Sometimes I think it just covers more the NFT space, generally speaking, and gaming. But they do broadcast live Gods Unchained competitions as well. So if you're big into that kind of stuff, Wednesdays at 3 p.m. is really a great show to check out as well. So to recap this week, our show here on Monday, weekly. Tomorrow night with Billy Jitsu, 9:30 p.m. Eastern. That's a bi-weekly show. And I mean, Billy just breaks everything down. He's got a developer's perspective. If you really want to cut through the bullshit and you want to know what happened, if it was a hack, if it was other, sort of projects that have, certain question marks around them, their tokenomics, their general security infrastructure, these types of things, particularly on the technical side, Billy is going to bring a lot of great insights that you might want to tune in for Tuesdays, and then NFTs and gaming on Wednesdays. I've probably been talking too long here, Edu. I'm going to go ahead and pass the mic here. Let's get into the news for today. I know we're starting with ENS. Is that right?
That is correct. So we're going to start with ENS, and it's a very simple proposal that is called EP12, a social proposal for the working group rules. So for those who are not familiar with ENS, the Ethereum name service, you may have seen it on some people's Twitter. They have their name and then .eth. That's a ENS. Basically, they launched the DAO back in January last year, and they are making an update after the finish of their first season. That is going to finish in a few weeks. They put up this proposal, EP12, that started on May the 13th and will end on June 4th. Ended on June 4th, sorry. And the idea of this proposal is to repeal the working group's group rules that passed on EP4 and replace those rules with working groups rules specified in this proposal for the second term of 2022 and all the terms thereafter. These rules add more details about steward responsibilities and the management of working group funds, as well as introducing the requirements of each working group to appoint a lead steward. The proposal also introduces a rule to appoint a new DAO secretary responsible for managing working relationships and communication across working groups, as well as performing administrative duties for the DAO. So this is a very interesting proposal because, just to provide context, at the launch of the ENS DAO, they had 5 stewards per working group. There were 4 working groups, and we had 5 stewards per working group. So there will be 3 stewards appointed by the DAO and 2 stewards appointed by TNL. True Names Limited, TNL, it's a mother organization. Phrasing is a mother organization of ENS, and then they had 2 representatives in the stewards for every working group. But since they had some feedback regarding the first season of the ENS DAO, they decided to cut down the amount of stewards to 3, with no obligatory representation of TNL on this stewards. So there will be only 3, and they create also this figure of the secretary and the lead steward. The lead steward will be like the coordinating point, and then we have the secretary, which is a DAO-wide coordination project manager kind of role that will be elected by the elected stewards. I'm not sure I have heard this name or this responsibility fall into someone before on any other DAO. I have heard about project managers working in conjunctions with the stewards, or or working groups dedicated to coordination. But what do you think about this model of choosing someone who will be the one, or yeah, the one leading the coordination efforts for a DAO?
It's interesting. Again, this is part of the trend we've been seeing, I think, and you have obviously the best insights here on all things ENS. Yeah, do you have any idea who, like, how this would take shape? Are there individuals that you think are likely to fill this role? Or like,
Yeah,
yeah.
so the interesting part is that it's not like they are going to hire a project manager. The idea would be that it's someone that will be appointed by the stewards, by the elected stewards. And what could be interesting is it's most likely some of the stewards will be the ones that will get elected as as the secretary. I am a little bit hesitant, and I expressed this on the forum at some point. That I'm a little bit hesitant of two things. The first is the lack of sort of responsibilities and time commitment that this proposal, specifically the one that we are looking at now, is putting up. Like they didn't express any um, kind of commitment of time expressed or responsibilities. Like it's very open. The concept of the steward, and also for the concept of secretary, is quite open. Like since that role didn't exist before, they're gonna. I guess that they're gonna try it out first and see how it comes out. But I do believe that my hesitation comes from having only one person doing this role for such a big organization. I feel you will need at least two or three people doing this job of a secretary. And let's say that it's only based on objective sense making of time zones. If a lot of the stewards lives in the US, a lot of them lives in Oceania or whatever it is, they're having someone to coordinate in a completely different time zone of you. It's quite tricky. So we will see how this plays. Have you seen a DAO with this kind of figure? It's like a central. It's not a central figure, but it's a coordination point. Have you seen someone like this on a singular person rather than like a working group?
There's not a specific one that comes to mind. It is interesting. It's almost like a parliamentary model, though, right? If the stewards are themselves, in effect, elected, and then they choose one from their own, or are they choosing, like, is the secretary role an overlap with someone else, like with another, like potentially with a regular steward, or would it be an entirely separate person?
They don't specify that, so I guess it could be both. It's by the decision of the stewards apparently.
Well, and having sort of attended their meetings on a regular basis, what do you feel like is the primary motivation for, really pursuing this and going to the snap with it and all that?
No, I just feel like it's ENS is such a wide ecosystem, and it's an experiment itself at this stage. And I feel like what they're trying to do is to come up with ways to find a balance, find a better coordination, because there was no coordination between working groups in the ENS DAO at the moment. So I feel like they are trying to patch this and come up with solutions that are coherent. So I think this is one of these kind of experiments to see if this role, the DAO secretary, will turn out as they expect.
Interesting. When is this? So it obviously passed. When is it expected to go into effect?
For the next term. So it will mean that in July, from July on, there will be the secretary role alive.
Interesting. Well, I'll look forward to hearing
So,
how it shakes out there.
so
Yeah.
there are two terms. You have the first term that is from the 1st of January, and then the second term that starts in July the 1st.
Got it. So what about you, Edo? Are you looking to take on a more responsibility and a larger role at ENS, or are you just sort of continuing to observe and participate for the time being as a contributor?
I would rather not mix professional.
Got it.
No, I like the idea of being part of the ENS community. I feel it's a playing ground at this stage. So I'm still in between, still watching, still contributing to some extent, but I will see. I think it will also depend on what happens with this term, and I want to see like what are the results of the last term and the first season. If you want to think in that way, I want to see what is like the documentation that is provided as a result of this first season, because it will you will have a sort of a overview of what has been going on in the last 6 months on the ENSDAO, and you can make a better decision whether to engage in that or you still think it needs more time. So we will see how it plays.
Right on. Right on. Cool. Well, folks,
All
take a
right.
look then at ENS if you hadn't. Follow them on Twitter. I mean, you can check out the links as well here in the Discord, One Hive TV. We're going to drop the links to both forum discussions and snapshots. Going to Uniswap next, sir. Is that right?
Yeah, and just to let
Right.
people know, there are two ENS Twitter. There is a ENS DAO and there is a ENS domains. The ENS domains is a blue tick one checked, and the other one is for the DAO affairs, just to have some context for people. So
Perfect.
Uniswap is a temperature check proposal that asks the question: should Uniswap community participate in the protocol guild pilot? And the first time I read about the protocol guild pilot, it came from the ENS, actually, since we just talked about that. And the idea is that the protocol guild aims to address, just to provide context and for everyone to understand what is the protocol guild. The protocol guild aims to address the challenges mentioned with the challenge mentioned for core contributors to the Ethereum protocol with a simple tool, a weighted split contract that includes vesting. Members will solicit the sponsorship in the form of tokens from applications and protocols that are built on Ethereum, which gives core contributors exposure to success at the application layer. Current contributors are rewarded for past work through time-based weighting, and current contributors contribute for longer periods, resulting in less contributor churn. New contributors are incentivized to join core protocol work, protocol evolution, and maintenance is more robust. To date, this guild includes 110 Ethereum protocol contributors, including researchers, client maintainers, upgrade coordinators, and more of a all self-curated. This is a broad-based ecosystem effort, and members come from 22 different teams and 9 different organizations, and only 30% of members are directly employed by the Ethereum Foundation. The membership is continuously curated through quarterly updates to the split contract, and they expect that the membership will grow to over 150 of the course of the pilot. Of course, these guild contracts will act as autonomous value routing mechanism operated independently from any existing institution. It's purposely built for incentivizing long-term core protocol work. Um, so they have like the project. They add some context that this project started in November 2021, where they built some norms, how was onboarding, and they have already said that at this point they have tested mechanism efficiency with 1 year of testing and 10 to 20 million pilot. And they want to make sure that the mechanism operates smoothly before graduating a full-scale fundraising round for longer vesting period. Um, and they keep this, for example, in the case of ENS, they were asking for 200K. That was part of the unclaimed airdrop that ENS had, so that could be sent to the pilot vesting contract. Now, going back to Uniswap temperature check, this vote that was put up on June the 2nd and it was closed on June the 5th. It's basically very similar to the ENS one. This is a proposal, it says, for the Uniswap community to support important Ethereum public goods through the protocol guild. They propose that 500K uni, around 2.5 millions, be allocated to support the ongoing work of those core contributors in the initial protocol guild pilot. So they provide the same context. So far, this proposal has 14 million uni, a 100% yes, so this passed, and only 45 uni were voted against. On the amount of people who voted, we had 1,139 voters. And they also expressed a little bit about how it could be beneficial for the Uniswap community. They, of course, provide the base that the Uniswap long-term success is tightly coupled with the continued evolution and maintenance of the Ethereum protocol, and that they feel that contributing to the pilot meaningfully increases the incentive to contribute to the core protocol, including the merge, EVM improvements, supporting L2, proposal builder separations, and continuous client maintenance and coordinating network upgrades. Of course, they also said that having exposure to Uni allows protocol contributors to engage more with the Uniswap governance, and the members will be encouraged but not obligated to use the vested tokens in their respective governance framework. And that finally, they also said that the Uniswap should be among the protocols to maximally align with the public good of the largest ecosystem it operates in. It feels Ted, that this is like like a donation of some kind of to incentivize the protocol that you are based on. And it feels, of course, you have the narrative of the public good that has been quite hot on the past months. But I feel it's a really nice way, mainly to give visibility and incentive for people to improve the protocol that we all use, and at the same time, that since it's a multi uh, organization effort, so you are not tied by, oh, this is my friend, or this kind of thing that, oh, I got the funds because I am very deep into this community. No, this is a more of a decentralized approach to how you can incentivize contributors from different backgrounds to improve the same ecosystem. What do you think? That
Yeah, check more into Protocol Guild, and I'd encourage people to check out their Twitter as well. I mean, they're, this I recall now the proposals or the proposal we covered in the past where they were, up on the ENS governance, making a similar request. I recall that now, but I somehow hadn't made the connection until listening to you talk about it today. And they frame themselves as a new public goods funding mechanism, so obviously specifically around Ethereum. But yeah, no, I mean, it makes total sense, and your explanation of it helped me get a grip on what they were looking for here. And in a sense, what struck me is that this type of mechanism, right, it brings funding from existing, successful existing projects to contributors, and it makes it much more accessible to contributors, I feel, than if you had to go through project governance, right? So if you made specific contributions, it seems as though the Protocol Guild is a place to consider, learning more about, join their Discord here. And it is the case that this proposal passed, right? Or it already passed the Uniswap. And this is a temperature check, though, so it still has another step or two to go, I think, right?
You are about right. So they will, after that, they will move to consensus check and then the on-chain vote after this temperature check that has already passed.
Very cool. Well, there wouldn't be enthusiasm for this type of thing unless there wasn't continual building happening and opportunities in this public good space, though. So I think that we were discussing earlier, I think that this idea, it's easy if we're in communities that are always using the term public goods, but I feel like this is, a phrase that is definitely catching on, is something that we see as a point of overlap between not just, projects that are specifically built around public goods or to fund them, such as Gitcoin, but the new Optimism ecosystem, as well as these these stories such as what we're covering today related to the Protocol Guild. I think public goods are obviously the future here, so big ups to the people who are focused on them.
You are about right. So we can move to Aave. That makes sense.
All right, let's do it.
So this proposal it's quite not funny. It's quite interesting. It's a small proposal. Maybe many of you don't know what it is, but if you are familiar with MetaMask, it's one of the few options you had to buy crypto with a card. So I have been using quite a lot this tool, and this proposal it's about the Transact tool. And it's a proposal that says on the Aave protocol, add Transact Fiat on ramp service on Aave. And it's a proposal that started on May the 28th, and it will end on June the 5th. It already ended, sorry. on June the 5th. And basically, this proposal is to add Transact to allow users across multiple blockchains network to buy cryptocurrencies in order to get a yield earning tokens in their wallet. Currently, to earn interest on tokens or borrowing funds, users have to obtain their cryptocurrencies beforehand in order to interact with Aave. Transact supports all the networks where Aave v3 is currently deployed and enables Aave users to access a supported DeFi in one step through Transact one-click to protocol solution. Users will only need to enter their wallet address and pay through their preferred payment method to use Aave. Transact one-click to protocol solution hides the blockchain complexity and combines all 5 transactions into just one step. This proposal, which already passed with a yes, 43,000K Aave, 98% level of approval, and 2,090 voters on this. Have you ever used Transact, Ted?
I have not actually, but I know that it's one of these. There's a number of them in this sort of fiat on ramp, off ramp space. Like Gem, and I know there's Mount Pelerin and Ramp, and some are available in the U.S. and some are not. It looks like, and I got it up on screen if people are watching on YouTube, it looks like this is not only available in the U.S., but is available with the use of a Visa card, Google Pay, Apple Pay.
Yep.
So yeah, I have not used this before, but it's definitely it makes sense to me, right? Rather than people having to go to a centralized exchange in order to on ramp fiat to the space, they could do it this way. And obviously, you're still going to be KYCing, right? You're not going to get money from a bank account to the blockchain, at least in the U.S., without giving some sort of personal information. But it's certainly nice to go directly to Aave. Makes sense to me.
Yeah, so the way it used, I used my Panamanian identification, and it was really simple. Like, you get verified like in 5 minutes, and after you do that, it's really easy to buy using any card. So I don't know. It always felt really smooth. The price was really cheap to buy, like in the sense of there were not so many fees and so on. And I always used since I got MetaMask and since I got that option, I always started using it for buying stuff on MetaMask. And the thing is, the only perk that it has is that, which is a personal perk, is that, for example, like a few months ago, my Panamanian bank sort of didn't recognize the transaction and they blocked. And it seems that Transact doesn't allow you to unblock your account without the bank consent, which is a very weird approach to things. So I had to open a new Transact account in order to do any interaction, because the other one was blocked by my bank, and it was a very weird interaction. But that's the only perk. In 2 years I have been using it. That's the only perk I have. So I feel like it will be, in general, any mechanisms to access directly or buy directly crypto, I feel it's an improvement to any protocol or any blockchain.
Yeah, no, I agree, man. And there are two. So like if you're, for example, on Gnosis chain, if you're a contributor to one hive or other DAOs that have tokens on GC, you can use Mount Pelerin and you can use Ramp network. Transact may also be, but I'm not sure. Let's see what networks they have. So they have ETH mainnet. A bunch of different stuff. A lot of different USDC coins for different different chains, which I personally find really useful. Like if you can on ramp to stable coins, on virtually any network, that's a really cool way to get involved in DeFi. Very cool. So this is going to be built directly into the Aave UI, though, it looks like, right?
You are correct, and I was muted. I'm sorry.
I do it all the time.
Yeah, it's all good. So yes, it seems like that. Do you want to move to Gnosis?
Let's do it. I'll get it up here on the snap.
I'm actually really proud of this. I'm not the one who built it, but I'm really proud of this proposal, because GIP 48 is a proposal that was put up in Gnosis DAO, and it asks the question: should the Gnosis DAO implement the praise reward system around the Gnosis chain validator program? proposal that started on June the 3rd and it will end on June the 10th. And so it's a very, very basic proposal, but very core to my organization and very close to also to One Hive. The praise system can benefit and grow the Gnosis Chain validator community. It says verify validators in the Gnosis Chain and Gnosis DAO Discord can earn a small amounts of GNO for helping community members and for onboarding those interested in running a validator. So for those who are not familiar with the praise system is a system developed initially by the community of Giveth and Common Stack. I think it was initially deployed on Giveth and then it was transformed into a product by the Common Stack community. And the most advanced version, I feel, or I believe, is running right now on the TEC community, which is my community, one that I belong part, and also that Ted is part of. And basically, it's a very interesting. It's a micro. I always like it to describe it as a micro token economic system because it has, for me, the three components of a token economic system. It has the economy layer, it has the cultural layer, and it has the governance layer. And for me, any system that incorporates these three layers are a token economic system in my very ignorant mind. So the idea is that the praise system is a system that not only it's built on the culture of gratitude. So for example, I will praise Ted for always being on time, and that praise has to happen in a public channel. So that will bring acknowledgement to him, but also will surface things that are not visible or that are subjective. For example, if I really like Music Heaven profile photo here on Discord right now, one of the people who are listening to this on Discord, if I really like Music Heaven profile photo, I can praise him for that. I can praise anyone else who, for example, Shy, who has a dog on his profile. I can praise for whatever I want. And that person who received the praise will receive the tokens of the organization who use this system. And the idea of this is that by receiving this token, you will gain access to the governance layer, because you have the tokens of the community. But also you will, you are part of the cultural layer by just being part of this culture of gratitude and by publicly acknowledging someone. And it also brings to surface work that sometimes is invisible. For example, all the work that Rohik does for One Hive TB can be surfaced and can be bring to a public channel if I praise him for that. And so is this very, very peculiar system because it's also a reward system. So they are looking for implementation on this for the Gnosis DAO. And I'm really looking forward to see this because there's not so many reward systems implemented on the DAO space, and this has a very particular emphasis that is not only built on receiving rewards, but it's also built on the culture. It's you have to be part of the culture of gratitude in order to use it properly. And I feel that's such a strong aspect that it's not only about the money that you get or the access that you get, it's also about the human aspect behind it. What do you think, that?
No, I agree 100%. I think that the cultural aspect becomes even more important when you're, in times of more, I guess, higher stress, perhaps due to market conditions or, the types of stress that a bear market brings. And so if it may be slightly self-serving because we have been a part of communities that have adopted this tool, but we've also therefore seen the results of it. I think I'm excited to see other platforms adopt it, right? In this case, this vote looks like it's going to go on for another 3 days. So if you're a GNO holder, if you hold the Gnosis token, you can go to Snapshot and vote on this one. We also linked up the forum post. It's, of course, on the Snap as well to see the more detailed description of the parameters of this proposal. But GIP 48, in my opinion, definitely worth, again, supporting. It's a cultural thing. And just to be specific, it's also about incentivizing decentralization, right? It only takes one GNO to spin up a validator node for the Gnosis chain. And so and if you're limiting the praise rewards to those folks, then I think it's a great way to incentivize more people to run validators and to then, as a result, further potentially decentralize the network itself. So it's got a lot of benefits. Yeah, I'm bullish.
Yeah, I agree. We will see. We are really looking forward to the price system to be implementing on the communities and to that system to be evolved. There are so many possibilities because it's a system that you have to connect your wallet to the dashboard of the system in order to receive the tokens, and with that you can send messages through Discord using the system. It's a very peculiar system, and I really like it. And we're just seeing the beginning of it, so looking forward to see how TC Gnosis giveth evolve this system to the next level, and then we can move on to optimism.
Sure. Yeah. You want to say a few words? Do you want me to kick off the optimism convo?
Yes, we can. So, um, let's start with what do you think about the airdrop? Let's start with that.
Yeah, I mean it's airdrops are a really tricky thing, right? And a part of this is learning what is like in a so if you go back to like Uniswap when they airdropped their token like what a year and a half ago roughly, it was airdropped to everybody who ever connected a wallet. And it would be interesting to go back and look at the Sybil like attack issues that might be associated with that. But as far as I know, there was no equivalent effort to sort out addresses that may, to sort out a Sybil attack vector than as compared to what's happening with what happened is, I think, continuing to go on with Optimism and Hop.exchange more recently. So like the evolution of airdrops is highly interesting to me. Like I don't have any specific points of critique for Optimism because like I don't know. I can appreciate the complexity. I do think that the variables that they included, we talked about this I think a little bit. If it wasn't last week, I forget if it was a week before. I think it's interesting because if I go to the airdrop, where is the? I don't think I'm on the right page here. Okay, so the wallet address I've connected with is not getting an airdrop, but these 7 or rather 6 different criteria that they set up to receive or like be eligible for the airdrop, I think are interesting. So they have just the general user. If you had used Optimism, you would receive an airdrop. If you were a repeat user, obviously, like probably associated with volume, you're going to get more. A DAO voter, this is a very general category. If you participated in governance on L1, so this would, like if you voted, for example, if you had GNO, we were just talking about voting on the snapshot. If you had voted on any DAO snapshot with tokens held on ETH mainnet, I'm fairly certain for any DAO, if you did that, you would get a token drop. Multi-sig signers, obviously, this is linked to Gnosis chain or rather Gnosis safe. They specifically gave to folks that supported public goods. So they donated Gitcoin grants on layer 1. So this is like before, I guess, excluding Polygon, I think. Price out of Ethereum in this case, I think if you bridged ETH or other tokens over to Optimism. I'm sure I'm glossing over some details here, but these are the eligibility criteria. It makes total sense. I mean, to me, the obviously the user drop is as similar as it would be to Uniswap they were just referring to. But these additional layers of complexity, trying to capture people who are active in DAO governance, people who are active in DAO operations, because multi-sig signers, I mean, that's like the core of DAO ops, right? And then public goods oriented folks. I think if the purpose of an airdrop is to distribute tokens to people who you think would, have been involved in the types of things that you want to build or would likely be holders, I mean, it makes total sense, the eligibility here. I also know that they're really trying to sort out the Sybil attack issues, and the dump in price. Like I saw this headline that was like, Optimism dumped 70% after, I think the headline was after botched airdrop. It's like, look, man, just got to be honest with you. This is not easy stuff. Like, I wouldn't want to be the person designing the airdrop parameters and executing them. Like, give me a break, man. Like, go easy, go easy on these guys. I don't think it was botched. Maybe it was, but we're in a bear market. What the fuck do you think people are going to do when they get the tokens? A lot of people are going to sell. So I don't know. Yeah. What do you think?
That's a real question. What do you think? Like, do you think that they posted this option to basically block people from the community if they sold their tokens.
That's a
Like,
horrible idea. Sorry.
that's the first thing.
Yeah.
The second thing is, like, I think it's not black and white. Like, I will say, if you were, let's say, a whale, and you will have a huge impact on the price, I will just vest your tokens. Like, I think there's a parameter setting on the airdrop that could have been improved or tweaked a little bit better, in the sense of, depending on the amount of tokens that you will have a tax exit at least. Like what the concept of the minting bonding curve and token economics is. If you are exiting early the curve of the smart contract, then you will be taxed. And since you will be taxed, you can get your money, but you will get less money because you are exiting early. And I feel that there could have been tweaked with some kind of mechanism in that way, so people will incentivize. Because listen, for me, there is something very specific. We're in bear market, we're correct, but at the same time, optimism is about public good, and public good is something that you have to engage with. And if you are selling your tokens, you are going against the public good aspect. Therefore, you should not have access to a token because you're not engaging on that dynamic. But I think this is not so black and white. So I will just say, if you are a huge, there has been a huge investment on you, let's say, or you got a huge return from the public good, your commitment should be a sequel, and you will have to be, you could have your tokens vested for a period of time, to grow conviction, and then you could sold them. But if you want to sold them early, you will have to pay a tax back to the community. Does that make sense what I'm saying?
Yeah, no, well, so let me make sure that I'm clear too. Like, I think that there could be, like, there's always room for new mechanisms in the airdrops, right? And I think, frankly, token engineering commons and, like the augmented bonding curve itself is a very interesting example of that, or like just simple vesting. So could there be other like mechanisms added? Yeah, I mean, that's for sure. And I think it's always interesting to like consider the options there, because I'm sure that there are going to be increasing numbers of options over time, right? In this case, I think, again, I'm not 100% sure, but I know I've read a number of places that this has been referred to as airdrop number one. In other words, I think that there may be subsequent airdrops from Optimism. And I don't know if it's the OP token or what it would be, but it seems as though this is something. It's a space where there's a lot of experimentation happening, because it's like you could set up the eligibility dynamics, you could set up vesting dynamics, then you got to deal with Sybil resistance, and so there's all these different moving parts, I guess I'm saying. And the project that really nails it with the most elegant solution, obviously people will probably gravitate towards that. And I hear what you're saying. Like, let's put it this way: as long as as long as a governance token has monetary value, like, this problem is not going away. Like, the only way to actually solve that, it seems to me, is if you do separate them out, or you have a combination. Chatting with Paul last week about this with regards to retroactive funding with OneHive. If you were able to make a significant token allocation to a wallet address, right, for whatever reasons, so that they can have an important voice in governance, or sort of begin them down that path and empower people to make changes or participate in that governance aspect of things, while not giving immediate access to them, right? So to cash out, so to speak. Like, there's all sorts of different ways to experiment around this. I think the augmented bonding curve in effect does that, like automates that process, right? Because you can still vote with all that TEC, but you just can't cash it out, right?
Correct. Or if you cash it out, you will have to pay a tax, an exit tax.
Right.
So yeah, they mentioned that as the first airdrop. I feel like this is an iteration, so they will try, and I think, call me a speculator, but I feel like the matching of these with the Arbitrum Odyssey kind of also supposedly incoming airdrop, and like, this is not financial advice by no means. It's just interesting how there are happening these situations. We had the ENS airdrop too. There are these situations of different airdrops with different outcomes, and I feel the optimism one was really planned and was really well thought, as and thought. But of course, the context of the beer market and so on is different from the ENS context when they did the airdrop. So, but they both had the same kind of outcome, which was a dump in the price, and not so much of a turnout for governance. So I feel like Optimism could have learned a lot from the from the ENS airdrop, and at the same time, I feel they will iterate on more of this airdrop, since it seems that they will have more, or at least this won't be the last one. So I think it's an experimental ground, and at some point I would like this experimental ground not to be on the public goods area necessarily, because it's already such a fragile sometimes ecosystem, that I would like this experimentation in other DeFi spaces where they have more capacity to withstand the heat if there is any, and they have more elasticity. But that's my only concern, like if you condition people to only engage on public goods because they will receive economic incentives, then you will lose these people, as so there is this sort of, I like gamification, but not to the extent that the only reason people engage is because there's something to gain. So sometimes I'm hesitant of this kind of airdrops that sort of reinforce this figure of continuously people expecting something from your product or from your service, just because they are expecting something to receive in the end besides the product. You know what I mean?
Yeah, sure. And well, I think, like, let's just take users as an example, though, right? So, Optimism and any other network, right? They're generating fees. Okay, like the network is generating fees, the project is generating fees. And the question is where, like, in a sense, in order to generate fees, you have to attract users, right? And in the crypto space, one of the best ways to attract users is the expectation of an airdrop, right, of some kind. And sort of like rethinking the way that you could attract users is definitely worthwhile. But like, to the extent this mechanism works, like this dynamic works, obviously they've taken advantage of that. But then they've said, okay, well, a portion, and this is where we can dig into maybe a bit of the governance side of things here. And I'm interested in seeing how this all plays out. But if you're looking on the share screen, folks, on YouTube, we're scrolling through the page, which is a somewhat interesting landing page as well. But it says, Optimism protocol generates boatloads of revenue. The collective allocates this money to projects and communities building for the common good. The collective consists of two houses, and we'll talk about this maybe more in a second. But the idea is, if the Optimism protocol itself is generating revenue from users and transaction fees, and then that's going to go to support public goods through retroactive funding in particular. At least it's an interesting, like, they have a product, right, that's generating revenue is kind of the underlying point here. And they could just take that all in and, just like whatever, and distribute it through grants to grow their own ecosystem. But it seems as though they're specifically singling out public goods as a target for where that revenue should be directed. And so that I'll be very interested to see how that mechanic plays out, of course, in sync with, other projects that are, well ahead of the curve here, like Gitcoin.
I agree. So we will see. In my personal situation with this, I withhold the tokens of optimism. I didn't dump. I didn't receive many either, but I didn't. So I was happily, like, there is this. I told this story before, but I got the airdrop because I engaged on Gitcoin, and this is a shame. I will verbalize this to cure my shame. So I donated to Gitcoin. I don't know which round. It was the only and first time that I donated to Gitcoin. And I thought I had donated like $100 to different things. And then when I received the airdrop optimism, I was like, oh, I didn't thought I was eligible at all because I have never used optimism for anything. And when I saw I had the airdrop, I was like, oh, let's see the ratio. Like, maybe there's a ratio in between how much I donated and how much I received. So I went to Gitcoin to check how much I have donated, and it seems that I misclicked and I had only donated $1 to Gitcoin.
Oh,
So
no, is on mainnet, or was this like a recent round?
on mainnet.
Right on.
So I got an airdrop way more worth it than $1, but it was, I felt it was a sort of feel good moment for public goods. Like, if you then, because maybe that's what only few people only had. If you only had $1 to donate or $10 to donate, yet you receive this airdrop, it's a full circle public good karma kind of thing, don't you think?
Oh, totally, man. Yeah, 100%. And I'm sort of, Yeah, I'm just stoked that people like. I'm bullish on the public goods like concept. I think, as I've mentioned before, it would be good to get people on to properly debate its definition, because it's easy to get excited about words, but just sort of be hand wavy about it. Like, I think we need to have. It would help to have increasingly clearer, like, bright lines, to define what is and what is not. I know that's not an easy conversation to have, right? Because ultimately it means that some people in the status quo may, or the projects may not be considered public goods. But like having a working definition helps, I think, to move things forward, because the tragedy is when people, if it is a space that is not sufficiently well defined, it just becomes a place for grifters, like to pose as X, Y, and Z public good while not really, as you're saying, sort of have the right intention behind it. So anyways, I look forward to sort of tracking this whole development on optimism. And GR14 is coming up this week, folks, as well. So in 2 days, you'll have a chance to participate. And 1HTV is actually going to have our first grant up on for a Gitcoin round in this coming 14. So we're stoked about that. We'll share more information about that with you as soon as we have it. But yeah, I know we're almost at the top of the hour, sir.
Yeah, I shared something in the One Hive TV text channel for folks on YouTube who are not familiar. Join our Discord, and you will see under the category forums, there's a channel called One Hive TV where we share the links of many of the things that we have talked. And this is just this is sort of interesting, funny, however you want to see it, link to a Twitter called Coinfections. And Coinfections, it's a nice thing. It's just anonymously people who have confessed stuff regarding crypto. And some of them are about losing money, some of them are just happy ones. It depends. And it's just interesting because it contrasts your, things that may have happened to you, but you don't want to say it out loud. And you find certain comfort on this kind of stuff. So whenever, guys, you have a time to take a look at that, just have fun and engage if you feel like. Anyways, thank you so much, everyone who joined today. 279 people on Discord. Thank you so much for joining, and looking forward to see you next Monday.
Sounds good, Edu. Always appreciate having you on, man. Have a good week, and we'll talk to you soon, sir. Cheers.
All right. Take care, everyone. Bye-bye.
All right, GM, everybody. And once again, thanks for joining us today. I'm going to go ahead and do a really quick housekeeping and then take a quick break. And we're going to be back with Paul 2. And we're also going to have Margaret from Panvala with us to chat about some awesome community-based work that they're doing there and a new NFT program that they got going on. So if you're joining us here in Discord, again, GM to everyone, and just take a moment if you would. We're at the break here between the first and second hour. If you'd go to the announcement. So if you're in the server with us, Discord, One Hive Discord server, at the top, happening now, 1HTV DAO News Alpha, and there's a bit.ly link. If you scroll up to the top, the event, click on the bit.ly link, that'll take you over to the 1HTV YouTube channel. Please subscribe, hit that bell button, and we'll be giving out a special custom show NFT, hopefully beginning next week. And we'll give that out to a random new subscriber on YouTube. Our aim is to grow that channel. And if you hit the bell button, you always get notified when we're going live. This week we have today's show. We have a late night show with Billy Jitsu tomorrow. And then we've got NFTs and gaming on Wednesday. So again, make sure you head over to the 1HTV YouTube. Hit the subscribe bell button there so you can follow everything we're doing. We'll be putting up some highlights of today's show and other shows throughout the week on that channel as well. Make sure to follow OneHive.org on Twitter. And we'll be back again in just a couple minutes here with the second hour of today's show. Let me see. I'm looking over. Oh, Paul, you have joined me. How are you doing, sir?
Thank you, Wells. Good. How are you?
I'm doing excellent.
Nice. All right, taking a quick break.
Yeah, just a minute here, and I'll be right back. Paul and I. And if you want to get Margaret up here, feel free to, man. I'll be back in just a second.
Sounds good. high-level Panvala overview, which is that Panvala has been around for a long time. It's one of the older crypto projects and Web3 type community projects. And the initial idea of Panvala was a group of communities share the treasury of the Pan token. And the Pan tokens tokenomics have been built so that it kind of mirrors Bitcoin's token supply, where it has a fixed maximum supply and it's distributed to the people who are supporting Panvala the most as the inflation ramps up. And so what Margaret's going to be talking about when she gets on is a new program by Panvala, which is going to be extra helpful for the communities within Panvala, and it's probably going to make Panvala a much more attractive league to be a part of too. There's 90 communities in the Panvala League, and that's a lot of our favorite communities like Bright ID, Giveth, Common Stack, DX DAO. There's like all of our DAO friends are in it, and so this Panvala Stamps program is like a really cool new perk that all these communities are getting. Okay, and I think Margaret's here with her hand raised. Let me get her on. Margaret, hello.
Hello, greetings.
How are
Greetings.
you doing?
I'm doing well. Sorry for being a little late, guys.
No problem.
Hey, we're just hanging out. Great to have you with us, Margaret.
Yeah, thanks for having me. It's a pleasure to be here. Paul, don't let me stop you. I heard you weaving, seeding the ground.
Yeah. Yeah, so I didn't give away anything on the stamps program, but I think the One Hive community at least is familiar with Panvala stamps now. But yeah, I just gave the quick overview of the Panvala League before the stamps program. So, T-Wells, what do you think is the best? Should we start with maybe Margaret's, how she got into Panvala?
Yeah, let's. I figured we could start with just a brief intro. I mean, I think the good people who are tuned in today, they know who I am. They probably know you, Paul. We were on last week chatting about retroactive funding, and I see a lot of familiar faces, of course, in the audience here. So GM to everybody. Now that we have Margaret with us from Panvala, we can just kick off. And I figured, Margaret, to give you a chance to share a little bit about your story, maybe how you intersected with Web3 and how you ended up at Panvala, so people could get a little more context and get to know you a bit.
Sure. Let's see, which beginning to begin with?
When you were first born.
First heartbeat I heard. No, we won't go that far back. Web3 wise, let's see. It's one of those things. I don't remember the first time I heard about Bitcoin, but it was something that was kind of floating in the ether and in my awareness and kind of like a bubble rising to the surface. And something that had a lot of potential and seemed interesting. But as someone who doesn't have a technical background, originally for quite a few years, the activation energy to get involved in Web3, although it wasn't called Web3 then, felt really high for me. So it was something that I just kind of like could see in the corner of my eye and would kind of look at directly every once in a while, but wasn't really focused on. And sometime in maybe 2018, at the time I was working at Spotify, and a coworker who was a software engineer from Brazil just started talking about Ethereum and how they were invested in it and I think maybe working on it a bit, and just generally shared this I don't know, like their excitement and enthusiasm, and kind of like provided a hook that made some of the more abstract things that I've been hearing more real and tangible, and helped me really feel into the amount of energy and possibility that was brewing and already available. And That I think was one of the first seeds where it's like, oh, this is something I knew I should be paying attention to, but I'm actually going to start paying attention to it now. And from there, things have slowly developed over time. I don't know how honest to be, in that I would say Web3 is something that I have a lot of skepticism about, despite participating in it. So that's something I try to hold well and balanced. And I kind of feel like I tumbled into it accidentally, and I'm like, okay, let's see what this is all about. And I found my way to Panvala indirectly. I was participating in this social design club, which was run by Jess Watkins Miller and Joe Edelman, kind of coming out of their school around social design and values-based design. And Miran Babalola, who's the founder of Panvala, was a regular participant there. And he was always talking about his thing, Panvala. I never really, I was very confused. Like, this sounds cool. Like, all the ideas you're talking about sound really awesome. I don't really understand how it works. I don't really know what it is. But like, it's cool. You're cool. You have good ideas. And he was always kind of like, yeah, you know, we need people to help us, come work with us if you want. But I didn't really get what it was. And then at a certain point, at sometime last year, we had a conversation, Miran and I was telling them a little bit about some research I was doing about land use and some ideas around what I would like to kind of bring more into the world around collective land use and providing people access to physical resources through collective action that they might not have otherwise. And he kind of said, yeah, that's what we're doing. Like, wait, that's you're doing the same thing. Check it out. And it finally clicked in a way. And I was like, oh, okay. Yeah, it's kind of how I slowly made my way to the present moment.
Got it. So I have about 50. Margaret, I'm hearing a little bit of distortion in your voice. Do you want to, like, Paul and I both, I think, do you want to just relog real quick? Maybe hop out of the stage and then rejoin. This is a Discord thing. It's not you. We'll just blame Discord.
Yeah, we heard the whole thing, but it was kind of like the final scene in 2001: Space Odyssey, where like you're slowly drifting into the black hole.
Yeah, but I exit just the room or the whole application.
If you just exit the room and then come back, we'll bring you right back up. Let's try that. Thanks. As I said, you always verify though, Paul. That's why if I knew it wasn't me.
Yeah. I unplugged my headphones and plugged them back in. I was like, nope, that's not it.
Yeah. Let's see. I'm sure she'll be able to hop on again. So Niran is the common point of intersection for most people, it seems. There she is.
Yeah. Is this better? I can also switch my.
Perfect. Yes, that's much better. Yes. The last part that I heard was your intersection with Niran. But I know that happened, but maybe a little more color on that. And then what was the point of intersection with what you were already doing? Just one more time for the good people, because I think that was a critical point.
Yeah. Let's see. My intersection with Niran was kind of like finding appreciation for someone else who was thinking about social design and not really knowing what Panvala was. For me, it's been well, we can talk a little bit more about this, but a complex meme to kind of grasp in some ways. It's been a slow burn. And at a certain point, I was talking to him about land use and ways of rethinking how we collectively use and access land, which, you know, here in America, at least, land ownership is one of the fastest ways to generate wealth, and especially intergenerational wealth. So that's something that's present in my mind around projects around that, and collective land trusts, and collective action based on resources. And so when I was talking to Niran about like kind of the research I was doing and just what was floating around, he was like, yeah, that's similar to what we're trying to do with Panvala. Totally different domain, but similar concepts that we're working with. And like, here's what I'm doing here. And it finally, after hearing him talk about this thing for a year, it clicked. it became a lot less abstract. And yeah, so I just kind of was like, okay, let's see how I can help, what I can do here.
Well, I know we want to come specifically to Panvala, but I'm curious if I could draw you out a little more on the sort of land ownership rethink or redesign. Like, I'm curious to know more about what your thoughts are in that space related to crypto or not. And then you say you have some research that you've done. I'd love to get some of that linked up for people, because we do have some region minded people in the audience for sure.
Yeah, I will say it feels a bit like a rabbit hole. In that I'm a little afraid if I get going, I won't be able to stop. Might lead us in a different direction.
2 minutes. Joking.
Okay, great.
Go. We got time. We're here just chilling. Just go for it. Seriously. No, I'm completely joking.
No, what I will say about that is I don't quite know yet. That's something that I'd say I'm doing research to see what the possibility space is. Basically, my thing is cities. I currently live in a major city. Cities are really important. I can't quote the exact numbers, but more and more of the human species and global population is moving in cities, and it will be a significant percentage in the coming decades. It already is a significant percentage. And it's really important that we get cities right, as well as like there's this thought about cities are a relatively new phenomena in their current existence. So how do the ontological relationship between living in a city and then like the human mind and the psyche and the social structures and cultures that are both emergent from and affected by an urban environment. So that's one piece. There's also this sense of looking at like the larger place of kind of where we are as a planet with climate change, with our relationship to the systems that we are a part of, that nurture us, that feed us, like moving from extractive to generative systems, what our relationship with land has, or our current perhaps lack of relationship in some places and cultures has to do with the state that we find ourselves in now, and like what it looks like to repair that connection, to grow it, and how that may ripple into other areas of society and our resource systems, and how we're thinking about not just what we do, but how we do it and why, for what purpose. So when I'm thinking about like land use, for me, it's almost like a node, an octopus with many tentacles that reach into these different spaces, from urban design to like building collectives, like physical collectives as well as digital ones, community, thinking about the way that physical space is an integral component to wholesome interaction and well-being.
Very interesting. Yeah, and this obviously, like, this conversation takes on such a different character depending on where you live and like what people are. Obviously, there are communities of people outside the United States that have like brilliant insights on this and are probably already got great best practices. And one of the things that excites me about, I guess if we're going to use the term Web3, is its ability to really like bring those talents to the rest of the world, and like at the same time provide this like as it's also an opportunity that has not always existed. So yeah, I'm also curious to hear like I always like hearing people's greatest critiques, concerns, doubts about the so-called Web3 space. So like again, if you want to go specifically to Panvala, we can do that at any time. I'm just curious, learning a little bit more about your perspective on things, Margaret.
Yeah, no, let's meander our way there. See what we find along the way.
I think your audio might be conking out again, Margaret.
It's not doing that again. Hold on. I'm gonna switch away from this. Give me a second.
Okay.
Sure.
I shared a link in the cafe channel. It's a time-stamped part in the conversation I had with Neuron, and he talks about kind of the history of land ownership. And you can tell it's something he spends a lot of time thinking about. So it's pretty interesting to hear him also talking about that.
Is that clip up on the 1HTV YouTube? I remember the one you were talking about.
Yeah, it got posted last week.
Word. Yeah, would you put the link in the One Hive TV chat channel too, Paul?
Okay.
That would be. This is one of those things where it would be a whole lot easier for people to engage. I think if we had a more streamlined sort of Discord. I know this is something that's been an off and on discussion. Let's see.
I can. Is this better, guys?
Yes.
Okay, cool. I can say that, yeah. So Neuron, I think, does think a lot about land. I think one framework I've heard him talk about is land, labor, and capital, which is, like the triplicate foundation, I would say, of modern economics. So I think like there's this sense that a lot of people are kind of in Web3 are working with playing with the paradigms between those three things. And just, coming from a different perspective or domain, depending on their kind of personal orientation.
Yep.
Yeah, I think there's kind of a similar argument that's popping up recently with coin voting. And I'm thinking of it because Griff just posted, Vitalik had a post saying, what's the number one thing you disagree with me? And Griff Green posted your opposition to coin voting. And it definitely feels like a polarizing concept in Web3 that, like, should our governance tokens have a financial value, or should we be distributing governance rights and not have a financial value associated to them? And it does feel like the implications of that conversation are so enormous. It feels a little bit like the land, like how we decided to structure how people own land has kind of created the foundation for what society looks like today. And yeah, I see some similarities between the coin voting debate also.
Yeah, I don't know much about the coin voting debate, but even when you share that, Paul, the question that comes up for me is kind of like, what are the questions connected to or behind that particular question? There's this sense of almost like scraping away layers of accumulated habit and like familiarity of how we do things. There's this sense of what might be possible, not what is possible or what have we done, but like what could be possible, and then how do we invite that? So when I hear about like the coin voting question, I'm almost like, is that really even the question, or are there other assumptions and inquiries baked into that point that like need to be investigated further?
The critique.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I think it's the underlying uneasiness is the concept of buying influence, and like I think everyone kind of rightfully in their mind imagines voting related to money is like, imagine if voting for the president was something that you could buy. That it's
not
kind of a dystopian. Touche.
Yeah, it's like
yeah, well, maybe it would making it more transparent would solve some of those problems.
or it would create, a complete panopticon, right? So, yeah, the trade-offs are wild.
Only one way to find out.
But oh gosh. I just got a shiver when you said that. Like, oh god, it's gonna get dark.
Yeah. Well, I like T-Wells had a good point in our call yesterday. It's like it's good to experiment with this in our little realm here. That we're if we screw this up, then a small subsection of people get hurt. But if we solve these problems, then we fix the whole world.
Yeah. kind of like Dave Snowden talks about safe to fail experiments, right? So like you set up conditions where the risk is low enough that when, not if, because failure is inevitable in some sense, but when you fail, it's not catastrophic failure.
Right. Yeah. And I think it is always fascinating to me that, you know, that there are people who are really smart who've been thinking about these, you know, the concepts that have direct overlap with the dilemmas and questions that we have. But in many cases, they are either phobic of anything having to do with blockchain and like what would be concerned as what we're called Web3. Or you're insular in the space and like you don't know that those smart people exist. It's this really interesting like disconnect. So I think it's going away. Like that's part of what makes me bullish. But and like in a sense, every speculative wave, it still onboards more people, not in terms of their fiat to like exchanges, but what they're thinking about related to the technology that we're building. So like, yeah, and now is a particularly interesting time, I think, to be in the space, because folks that are here, they have to have, in some cases, a larger vision of what's possible. Yeah.
Yeah, there's something about that TOLs that like, I'll see if I can thread it into something that's been alive in some non-Web3, maybe Web3 adjacent spaces that feels like the more I'm noticing it, I'm recognizing that this is one of the things that kind of makes me a little bullish on Web3. And it's around capital, it's around money, which is, someone said this in the meeting last week, that money wants to be creative. Like money wants to move and flow and be generative, and in a sense like has its own, I don't know, energetic potential and qualities, and that there is this sense that like money wants to do creative things almost as if it has its own agency, and that like I could ground that in larger context that maybe isn't useful for this audience around some larger currents that I sense are happening. But with Web3, I really feel that like money is looking for an outlet. It's looking for a way to escape these very confining, rigid structures that we have like been enacting and reifying and kind of like accumulating detritus on. And it's really looking for a way to like get out and move in a more fluid and open way. And when I feel into like Web3 and crypto, that's kind of my sense, is like this is money trying to be creative and like expand out in a very generative way. And there's something that people are reacting to of like, yeah, that makes sense. Like that feels right.
The concept that money has its own agency is highly interesting. Yeah.
Yeah, and also the concept around the creativity and imaginal quality that's being invited. When you said that there are people who are like thinking in this space, but maybe aren't always aware of the others that are thinking about it, and that people are holding these imaginal visions that are quite vast. And I would say almost not people, collectives, right? Groups of people are holding these ideas because they're imaginal enough that it's hard for just one person to hold the whole thing. Like you have to collectively hold pieces of it and coordinate and work together to bring it into being. So like that,
Right.
there's this sense of both the creativity and maybe the binding energy of money in terms of offering a coordination tool that can be generative.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, even people that I would say in the academia or like very much in the software engine and computer engineering space. I'm not a technician, but I have friends. I lived in and around UT Austin for quite a while, and the Odin Institute there. Like there are people who are like seriously cynical and anti everything having to do with crypto. But the launching of like certain protocols, whether it's Ocean Protocol or others, where or like Vita DAO or some of the, like where there are these really interesting overlaps between like smart contract technology and solving real world problems that are actually, I think, breaking down certain barriers, right? Like we still have these huge questions that will persist, but when I see those types of crossovers, it makes me the most excited, right, about the future of things, at least.
What's do you have any examples of that, of things that you're seeing that are getting excited?
Yeah,
Aside from Panvala.
well, I'll show Moon Jelly. I love Moon Jelly. So like this is a project that is, I've mentioned before on the stream, but yeah, Moon Jelly is highly interesting. It has, if you want to Google somebody, you can Google Bryce Groark, Groark. And he and a fellow named Linwood Pendleton, who is like huge in the ocean research space. Groark is like one of the leading documentary like cinematographers for ocean, ocean cinematography. They're building a DAO to solve for ocean conservation. And I see a lot of folks, again, like, really smart people who their on-ramp to the space is not Coinbase. Like, and not to say there's anything wrong with that. Like my on-ramp to the space was not Coinbase either, but it was, searching for something that had the real use case rather than pure speculative interest. I got nothing wrong with speculation. Got nothing wrong with speculative whales. We love you. Okay, like, so don't get me wrong, but what makes me the most bullish for the longer term are people who are building things like they want to use the technology to solve real world problems that have regenerative potential. And one of the premise, just to take one step further from Moonshine, the premise is like one of the points of decentralization is the way in which using a DAO and cryptography and blockchain tools to empower local people to solve issues in a scalable way, rather than like continuing with the status quo sort of neo-colonial approaches, centralized solutions to climate change. Like that whole premise to me is interesting, so I could go more, but yeah, Moon Jelly is a cool group of folks that are building, and I think should really actually be onboarded probably to Panvala.
Yeah, let's get them in here. Yeah. I it's interesting. You're presenting something which I'm now realizing relates to like part of how I'm orienting in the wider crypto space around what the attractor is for people or groups within the space.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not going to take a stance on speculation. Things are not inherently good or bad, right? But there is this sense of, and now I'm realizing that, so like the way that people, the path they take in and how that may, so when you said Coinbase, like that kind of sets them up, that like orients them towards perhaps a specific direction within the space versus other paths that may like lead you into a different part of the topological landscape of crypto, whatever that thing is. And yeah, so I noticed like there's something about the attractor of coordination, of people who are using Web3 technologies to coordinate with each other. And that's one of the foundations versus, and speculation maybe being a tool that comes out of coordination versus speculation being the primary tool. There's something around that maybe order of operations that feels, for me, important.
I agree with that for sure. Like my sort of take on speculative energy is it actually relates, I think, to some of the like, I guess maybe there's an argument to be made that speculators are in some ways the tip of the spear when it comes to the creative energy that you're describing, right? And sort of this in the sense that, and there's a lot of it that is maybe misguided, right? But if you have some amazing idea that could transform the world, it's most likely that a speculator is willing to like provide capital, so there's this and be the whale. Yeah, I don't know what to say. Like, so yeah, I get you. Nothing is like everything comes with trade-offs and pros and cons for sure.
Yeah, and that, I think it might be fashionable to either take a strong for or against stance on speculation. And I guess I noticed that,
sure,
yeah, what you just said feels really right, of like No, that needs to be part of it. It just needs to be balanced with some other components.
Well, and so much of crypto is like just that. Okay, well, if it's just that, then this is why you have, locust capital that just goes to the next farm with the with the highest APY, right? That's, I think over time, as if that aspect changes, right, to more concrete support for sustainable projects, I guess that's the goal.
Yeah. Or yes. And I wonder, so I'm trying to think of, so this feels like, so to bring in Panvala here, this I think to me feels like one of the attractors of Panvala is this sense that the value, speculation being not the primary tool, like thinking about the value of community and agency and like the outcome of supporting community life for different communities, and that being the attractor. And then, okay, great, that's where we're headed. Like, what are the tools we can use to do that? There's like that, like for me at least, for Panvala is something that feels so generative and feels qualitatively different across all of my interactions, right? Like coming into this conversation, the people that I'm meeting, the work that we're doing, the communities that are attracted and are participating in Panvala, this sense that there's something more than just pure speculation. There's an type of interaction that's being invited and a type of like section of social behavior that, at least for me, I know I'm orienting more towards just in general, as well as within crypto.
Yeah, I mean, it sort of clicked for me when you described Panvala as a meta community. It's a community of communities here. And if you're, just as a quick note for the audience here, GM to everyone who's with us, and you can follow on 1HTV YouTube. We do have some visuals there. I'll be going through the website and adding some visual cues there to what Margaret's sharing with us. So I do encourage you to go over to 1HTV on YouTube and follow along and subscribe. But as far as what I have up on screen right now, Panvala is fundamentally open to all communities, right, to join. And does that mean obviously both crypto and outside crypto? Or how does Panvala describe or qualify like communities?
Ooh, good question. And I will give a shot at answering it, and then I'd be curious to hear what Paul has to say as well. In terms of, Panvala is open to all communities. I would say right now we are primarily Web3 communities, and my hypothesis is that that's really around ease of kind of seeding the idea and giving it some life and allowing it to kind of grow. The friction for onboarding, Web 2 or non-web communities is a little higher right now for us. So I think that's a goal for the future, and that if people are able to do it, they're welcome. We don't necessarily have the bandwidth to help them make that transition into crypto ourselves. So I think I acknowledge that it's probably harder for either crypto comfortable or like very personally curious and willing to put in that work in addition communities to join Panvala at the moment. But that's something that I think we would like to lower the friction for. And all it really takes is one or two members of your community who are that comfortable, and they can hold that space in terms of bridging to Panvala for any community. And there's a second part to your question that I think I'm forgetting.
No,
how does Panvala define community?
I think that was, well, yeah. Well, and sure. Yeah, I think that you gave a great answer there as far as how you're thinking about and who would be most apt to join. Is there a page on the website like where I can click to show folks on screen the existing members or the existing DAO community?
Yes, there is. Okay. Yeah, panvala.com/members. Yeah, so that has a pretty up-to-date list of all of our current members. I think I heard Paul mentioning there's about 90 communities that are members of Panvala at the moment. And there's a wide range in terms of what those communities are centered around and doing themselves. Yeah, Panvala is kind of the attractor itself. And I would say community life is one of the meta attractors in the meta community of Panvala. Yeah, Paul, what do you think? Anything you'd add on that front?
I think the best context for that is in what the stamps program is doing. So for people who aren't familiar with the stamps program, the Panvala stamps are NFTs that companies can buy, and they get them access to the attention of the communities within the Panvala League. And so those are marketing dollars basically. And back in Web 2, that was money that went to Google ads, Facebook ads, sponsored Twitter posts. And Web 3 is obviously so different than Web 2 that it kind of requires that we have innovative new marketing strategies. And so the first stamps programs are being funded by Opolis and Index Co-op. And what they're getting by buying these stamps is the attention of the communities within the Panvala League, which collectively are thousands and thousands of members. And you, as a member of a community, when you interact with Index Co-op and Opolis, you get these stamps, and you can redeem your stamp with any of the communities within the Panvala League. And so the community gets funding, the company that bought the stamp gets your attention, and you, as the community member, are sort of facilitating that transfer in value because you value your community, and you're also taking whatever action that company wanted you to do. And so that's the how it works. And then the what is going on a bigger scale behind that is that we have these communities which are like One Hive builds public goods, and we don't have business models for public good funding very well built out yet. And so this is a really innovative new way to sustainably direct funding from for-profit companies to public goods building organizations. And right now, those organizations are almost entirely Web3 native crypto communities, because those are the people who understand how to interact with NFTs and physically take these actions. But without a doubt, the long-term vision is that any community that's building a public good in the real world, education, science, disease prevention, anything that would be considered valuable in the world that doesn't have a private property business model, can be funded by Panvala. And the first iteration of that is stamps, but there's like unlimited future need and ability to figure out new ways of doing that. And yeah, that's my longer answer for that.
The stamps project is super cool. I think if we can, just like people who have never heard of Panvala before today, if you head over to their website, panvala.com/stamps, you can see what Paul is referring to. And of course, if you're tuned in on YouTube, you can see as well on screen there. So I'm going to explain to folks what my understanding of sort of what the user is, if people are coming here the first time, what the user experience is like and what the purpose of participating is, right? Paul, I think the most useful analogy you gave to start with is like rabbit hole. So people have used that before. The projects, in this case, Index Co-op and Opolis, they have certain things that you need, certain tasks that you need to go do. And in exchange for you doing them, you can then mint an NFT for yourself, and the project of your choice receives a certain amount of funding. Is that an accurate summary?
Yeah, that is.
Okay.
Yeah, accurate and succinct.
Well, that seems pretty straightforward. Yeah, go.
I was gonna maybe ground that and this talk about stamps in just a little bit more context of what Panvala is trying to do, or is doing, I would say. And this might be too abstract, so feel free to reel me in. But there's this sense that giving communities, individuals and communities agency, like having agency reside with as close as possible to you, not kind of distributing it out into the system where a company or another group of people who don't necessarily have your context or interests at heart are making decisions and choices on your behalf. So there is this sense of like bringing choice closer to the community level, to the individual level. And Panvala as itself is this ecosystem, right? That we're trying to allow communities and this meta community network to like build pathways of connection and interaction and value flow of being able to move money within the network, to invite it into the system as a whole, and then to have it flow as a resource that everyone involved can access and benefit from and contribute to. So stamps is really like this kind of liquid thing that can move from the network in terms of bringing in the outside funding from a sponsor, in this case, Index Co-op Annapolis, as our first partners to launch with, and providing direct value that people get to choose, like how they don't get to choose what the action is, right? The Index Co-op and Annapolis are kind of extending this invitation of like, hey, we want your attention. Hey, we really want you to check out this crypto index fund. We really want you to check out our services for payroll from Annapolis. And we think that like there's a good match there. They already have kind of done that work of like, yeah, you're the people we want to be talking to. We think that we should be in a conversation, but how do we do that? And we're willing to give you value and money in order to access your attention, as Paul said. And we're willing to like offer something to your community because we think that there will be something that you can receive from us. Like we're trying to have a relationship that has a transaction in it, but also has value on both sides that's explicit.
One of my favorite ideas for the, I guess, motivating people to do this, which we're gonna do for a Gardens stablecoin raise. So we're gonna use Hedgie, which is a DAO treasury tool for raising stablecoins with your governance token with minimal sell pressure on your token. And Hedgie just released a feature, I think it was like 1 or 2 weeks ago, where you can gate a token sale by an NFT. And so what we'll be able to do for Gardens is we have something like $20,000 of our governance token that will sell at a discount, and it'll be time locked. And the only way that you can access that token sale is if you either have an NFB or you have a Panvala stamp that you redeemed with OneHive. And that's like your proof that you are a community member that's helping OneHive, and that you're doing things that are very provably beneficial to the ecosystem. And it's just like, to me, this beautiful alignment of incentives of every single party that's involved with that transaction. Like everyone is happy, and there's like 4 different groups of people that are getting value out of that cycle. But yeah, that's a little separate from the stamps program itself, but it was just one thing I was excited about.
No, but it's certainly a reason for somebody to go get a stamp. I mean, the last one here for Opolis, I think is really cool too. I mean, so correct me if I'm wrong, but essentially, if people, if you don't know what Opolis is, you know, definitely check them out. It's a very interesting, I guess, I don't say Web3 collective. It's for, you know, folks working in the space, DAO contributors, particularly if you're living in the US. Opolis is a good choice to help you out with some of the critical financial legal side of things, as being a contributor, protecting yourself, all of that. So check out Opolis. We don't want to get into their project at the moment, but the idea that if you, let's say you're a fan of Opolis, if you're an effective marketer, right, you can just basically go make 5 referrals, and if you can close them, then you get to mint the stamp, and then I would get to choose. So let's say I did this. I make referrals, 5 referrals for Opolis because I think they're the jam, and then I collect the stamp so I can get the NFT, or the stamp itself will come to my wallet, and I get to choose where $52.80 goes. So like I could send that to OneHive, for example, if I wanted to, or any member DAO. Is that correct?
Yeah. So you can fund any member of Panvala, any member community. And if there's a community that you want to fund that isn't a member, then invite them to join, and then you can give them the money. Yeah.
Well, and so just quickly, if you click over to members, you can see there's like just a random. I used to live in Austin, so this Austin Meetups Fund, you know, that's obviously a local meetup fund. Okay, so funding meetups in Austin. It's not a DAO. It doesn't necessarily on-chain governance, but I could select like a local organization and help to fund it by shilling Opolis, in a sense.
Yes.
Fantastic. Hey, folks,
Yeah.
you should go check it out. This is pretty awesome.
Yeah. And the one of the great things about the stamps program is that it's really mutable, right? Like the Opolis stamp, they have 2 stamp options. One, you know, that they get to set kind of how much value we're placing on these different behaviors. You know, for Index Co-op, they have a $3 stamp because they're asking you to sign up for their newsletter. So that makes you eligible to claim a stamp. They're asking you to watch a video and answer questions about what they offer and kind of engage with their potential product offerings. And that makes you eligible to claim a stamp, right? And so you can claim up to 2 different $3 stamps from Index Co-op. And one of the best part about the stamps program, which I don't know if we've mentioned yet, is that based on how Panvala's treasury functions, with there being inflation matching, that collecting stamps is something that we're incentivizing. So not only do you get our best attempt at the dollar value of the stamp, you also get additional matching funds for the stamps that you and your community, the communities that are receiving stamps, get additional funds. So for every, you know, $3 stamp that a OneHive member collects, claims, and gives to OneHive is going to receive that $3, as well as an additional amount from the inflation matching.
Got it. Okay, remember, this is what Paul was talking about the other day. And yeah, I mean, obviously we are kind of closing in the top of the hour, so I don't want to take up, if people need to head on to other things. Totally understandable, but I'm curious. So like, I do know that there's also a staking feature that's been around, that's been inherent to Panvala's tokenomics for a long time. And so obviously that's still in place. And so there's an incentive for circulating supply to be staked in those contracts. And obviously going back to hedging, I know you mentioned a second ago, Paul, like it seems as though projects receiving the PAN, having that, having OTC options available for those projects to minimize any type of sell pressure if they need to like pay for their meetups, right, is also, it seems like an obvious choice at some point. I'm sure you're already all over that, man.
Yeah. Yeah, and what I'm really excited also about is getting some integration with the vesting app that Philippe is building, or just some kind of vesting feature within Hedgie. So right now it has a time lock, which is great because it delays any sell pressure for the token if someone's buying this at a discount. But streaming that token the way that like in Superfluid you can stream tokens. I think that's like the final feature that will make that tool really powerful.
Very cool. Well, so let's say it looks they got the email right. Oh, go ahead, man.
I was just gonna mention that for anyone listening here, the two best ways that you can get involved with Panvala are if you're in a community that's not a member of it already, then to send a message to Margaret. I think it's members@panvala.com. Is that the membership email? Nice. Yeah, so send an email to members@panvala.com with some quick information about your community, what it is, and what you do. And then also redeeming stamps, obviously. Going to that panvala.com/stamps and checking out the active stamps right now for Index Co-op and Opolis, and participate and help fund your DAO. OneHive is the #1 most redeemed community right now, and it's the only reason that OneHive is getting these stamps redeemed is just because we're on Twitter and on Discord, and we're kind of publicizing it. But there's like for any community that you're interested in funding, it's pretty easy to promote it and do one of these actions and then redeem the stamp, and they'll get both the funding from the stamp, and then they'll also get an extra bonus from the Panvala inflation, which is another part of the incentive early on.
And the NFTs are on Gnosis Chain, is that correct? They're on a unique one?
Yes. That's right.
Yeah,
I've got mine here too. I'll send you a link so you can put it on the OneHive TV.
Yeah, I was just going to add that we made a conscious choice to put the NFTs on Gnosis Chain, in part because I think there's this sense that there's real community around that, and other projects that are doing cool things, and this desire to kind of be a part of that ecosystem and amplify that space and kind of maybe bring attention there and kind of, like participate in something that seems like a worthwhile endeavor ourselves.
Right on. I mean, I think, Gnosis Chain is an interesting ecosystem, and formerly XDAI Chain, folks, if you remember back that far into what seems like, I guess yesterday, it wasn't that long ago, but formerly XDAI Chain, Gnosis Chain now. There's a lot of great projects that are building on chain and in this space. And we actually have a video coming out in the next couple of days here that'll feature DAO tooling, and we'll make sure to fold Panvala in the future and any other conversations we're having on there, particularly these NFTs. The artwork is really, really cool. I love it.
Yeah, so the artwork is chosen and designed by each sponsor, and it's, an opportunity for them to be as creative as they would like. And I think there's space there for kind of future invitations and integrations around art in general, of doing some cool things with, building that out. Like I really like the Opolis, their take on the, what is it? Inverted Jenny, right? Which I don't know if people know the history of that stamp, which was a mistake, a printing mistake. And so a limited set of US postal stamps were printed with an inverted plate. And so that, like, for people who collect stamps, physical mail stamps, postage stamps, that's I guess a very rare collectible that is worth a lot of money. And so they kind of used that as their inspiration for their first rare stamp NFT.
It's very thoughtful. I like it. Yeah, Josh is really cool. I don't know if Josh was directly involved with this, but he came up with some equally interesting ideas back last year for what was it? What was it, Paul? The rainbow rolls for RIP Medical Debt.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, Joshua does a ton of cool stuff. He's also one of the founders of ETH Denver, which T. Wells and I were hanging out at earlier this year.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
there's this sense that the stamps program is kind of this space where companies or sponsors, groups that want to be creative with their marketing in the crypto space can kind of experiment and flex with those muscles and kind of like try new things. Yeah, of kind of like, I think Paul mentioned this earlier in terms of how One Hive is going to try to use Panvala stamps in that vested gated token sale. That like there's creative possibilities that we're still kind of discovering and imagining, and that there's space there to think about the way that these stamps can function.
Definitely. Yeah. I mean, I think that whole mission of sustainable public good funding is the most important challenge in the space. I mean, if you can solve that, if you can make public goods investable in a way that doesn't compromise their quality and just gives them more funding to make them better, then there's no ceiling on the financial value of that.
Well, obviously, there's so many different ways that people can do that these days, right? I mean, obviously GR14 is coming up in 2 days, so I want to encourage people to participate in Gitcoin round 14. And what is interesting about the stamps is that it's is the sort of task-based rabbit hole-esque type approach here. So if you're interested in even just learning more about Index Co-op and Opolis, right, like it's worth your time to go over here, and in the process you can get a cool NFT that maybe has some speculative value, and you can direct funding to the DAOs of your choice. So I would encourage everybody definitely to go to panvala.com. If you have like a DAO that you're just hearing about Panvala for the first time, or a community, definitely click join, and it looks like you can schedule a call there. And if you're interested in supporting One Hive or any of the other awesome DAOs in their community, definitely do one of the stamps, get one for yourself, and support the building of public goods.
Yeah. We welcome more communities. We want people to collect stamps. We want to know about how the experience is, how we can make it better. We want to run more campaigns. Like really, stamps are a really exciting and powerful tool, and a new way to think about, how we can fund public goods. So we want your participation. Check it out. Tell us how to make it better. Help us build it if that's something that's appealing to you.
Damn straight.
Fantastic. Well, it's been great to chat with both of y'all, and GM to everybody who joined us here in the Discord. It's good to see all of y'all with us on Monday. We'll be back, of course, next week as well. We got Late Night with Billy Jitsu tomorrow, and NFTs and Gaming on Wednesday. So definitely make sure you subscribe and hit the bell button on YouTube and get notified when we go live. Appreciate everybody for joining us, and Margaret, Paul, Jim, to you guys as well. And we'll have to definitely have you back on to chat about Panvala in the near future, and as this stamps program rolls out. Really cool stuff. Thank you for joining.
Thank you, T. Wells, for having us. Thank you very much. And thanks everyone for listening.
Yeah, thanks guys. Happy Monday.
Happy Monday. Have a good rest of the week, everybody. And we will see you all soon. Cheers.
Bye.